What's going on, guys? Jimmy here with the General Expert channel here on YouTube, and today I thought I'd give you a little update into the Wyze Cam Floodlight that I purchased a little while back. Now, this is an update to the original video I did that I'll link right up here, in which I unboxed it and installed it and showed you what it looked like at night. And my first impressions in that video were, it was all right. I think I did mention towards the end that the jury was still out. As for the floodlight matched with a camera, the jury's still out. And well, I've had it installed and used it for a little bit now, and I'd like to let you know what I'm thinking about it. Here is that Wyze Cam Floodlight, and you can see from the last video, I have adjusted the direction of the light. In that last video, I had one of those LEDs pointing kind of where it is now, in the direction of the camera. And then I took the other light and pointed it almost 180 degrees completely behind it. Now, the purpose of that was mainly for my benefit, just to get a very wide use of the light coming off of this floodlight. I have since adjusted that rear light to better suit my needs. So what do I think about the Wyze Floodlight? Well, as you know, it is not only a floodlight, but it also has a Wyze Cam V3 attached to it. Now, in the beginning, I thought, man, this is genius. And the reason why I thought that was genius was, well, because like I stated in my first video, we have all these cool cameras from Wyze, but the one problem with them all, aside from the battery-powered one, is where do you plug them in? You have to run like extension cords if you want to use them outside, which isn't really safe. And then, figure out some way to staple those extension cords and then the plug-in cord and everything from Wyze to get that thing to work. Anyways, it turns into a big, gigantic hassle. And yes, you can get them to work, and everyone does, including me, but it's just not a great solution. And so I thought, wow, they're really addressing this problem. They've now created a floodlight which will provide light to the scene and couple that with their amazing V3 camera. Unfortunately, there's a huge problem with doing that. And the problem is, just like I showed in the first video, that Wyze Cam V3 is so sensitive to light that when you now have an extremely bright LED shining on the subject that you're trying to record, it ends up completely washing out the person's skin if it's light enough like mine. As I got closer to the camera, my skin was completely pure white. And so the problem there is that you're not going to see the detail of someone's face and what they look like and all that if it was some intruder trying to break into your house. And of course, a lot of you in the comments, just like I would do, said, hey, turn down the brightness of the LEDs. Well, I tried that and that didn't work, because the only thing that happens is the Wyze Cam V3 adjusts its exposure. And so even though there's less light coming from the floodlight, now the camera has adjusted its exposure to compensate, and I'm still completely washed out and completely white. Now, another problem I was having is I was getting so many notifications from that thing, it was just impossible to even use. And with that camera, I did subscribe to the Wyze Cam Plus. I think that's what it's called. And when you do that, you get the Wyze AI, the artificial intelligence, and so it's supposed to help with notifications to where you can set it where you're only getting notified if the AI is detecting an actual person or an animal or something that you want it to detect. I switched that on and it did work quite well. I'm now no longer getting a whole boatload of notifications. I'm only getting notified if, it's a human or something that it thinks is a human, which basically cut way down on the notifications, which made it a lot better. Okay guys, here I am on the Wyze Cam V3 during the day. The floodlight is obviously not on because it doesn't need to be, but I just wanted to show you that the Wyze Cam V3 during the day and on its own performs very well. I'm close to the camera, where at night, at this point, I would be completely washed out. Completely white, unable to make out anything about what I look like. Right now during the day, I'm guessing that you most likely can see what I look like, what I'm wearing, the color of my hair and things like that. So the Wyze Cam V3 on its own, great camera. Okay, and just for an interesting comparison, I am being recorded right now on my old Sony Action Cam, which is 1080p, just like the Wyze Cam V3. So I know the Sony Action Cam is going to be, obviously, the footage is going to be much better, and that's because it's not being recorded and then transmitted wirelessly, at a certain data rate. This is being recorded directly onto a card, in which it's, I don't know, it's just going to be better. I get that. But what I want to see is the difference in the actual quality on my face and all that stuff during the day, about the same time that I recorded the footage from the Wyze Cam V3. So what do you think? Does it look way better on the Sony Action Cam? I suspect it would, but interesting comparison nonetheless. So overall, do I think the Wyze Cam Floodlight is a good product? Yes and no. I mean, it's cool, I guess, you know, but the problem is it doesn't really do what I was hoping it would do. You know, they did solve a problem with it. They created a spot to mount a Wyze Cam V3 and power it without having to run a bunch of extension cords and, you know, just this silly setup to make it work. In that regard, it's a slam dunk. But the reality of it is I paid $100 for a floodlight and a Wyze Cam V3 just so I have a place to kind of sort of mount a Wyze Cam V3 without running an extension cord. So I already had a floodlight up there, and I took down the floodlight that I already installed to mount this new floodlight with a Wyze Cam V3. And I think that was kind of counterproductive, counterintuitive to do that, because I already had an excellently functioning floodlight, like I said. Now, there are a few benefits, right? Now I can kind of control that floodlight as well as some other like security features like a siren and stuff like that from the Wyze app on my phone. But like I was saying, the reality is the footage coming off of the Wyze Cam V3 when the floodlight is on is just not good. Not good at all. There are certain instances where, for example, really far away, the subject isn't going to be as washed out. Because of the inverse square law, there's much, much less light hitting the subject farther away, and therefore the subject won't be washed out and white. So you can see what's going on in that situation. The problem is the subject is very far away, and even then you can't make out really what the subject looks like. And so, I don't know. For $100, I would just have to say pass on it. I would say go buy an actual Wyze Cam V3 and stick to the old ways of figuring out a way to mount that thing. But Wyze has come out with a few products like a bulb extender plug thing, USB plug thing, a couple of different things I think that they've recently come out with to where you can take a bulb and put a socket in between your bulb, your outside bulb, maybe on a sconce or something like that. And now you have a plug-in for the USB cord for the Wyze Cam V3. I know all of this sounds a bit confusing, and that's because it is. With Wyze, we're getting these discounted cameras and, you know, all that, but we're also having to now figure out ways to make this stuff work because there isn't like really solid ways. I will say the one camera that I've been really surprised by lately has been their battery-powered camera, their outdoor cam. And that camera, even though the battery has to be recharged from time to time, if you have the settings set right and you subscribe to the Cam Plus forum so that you're not getting so many notifications so that it's being able to use the Wyze AI, it seems like the battery's lasting quite a while for me, and I don't have to worry about powering those things. The only thing I have to do is make sure that I can access those and pull them down to be able to recharge them and clean the lens off and whatnot. So to me, if you need an outdoor camera, you don't want to have to run wires and try to figure out that whole mess, try their outdoor cam. It isn't perfect by any means, but they just recently came out with a Wyze branded solar panel so that you can connect it to that outdoor cam. And yes, this stuff's starting to get a little expensive, but I think it's still a heck of a lot cheaper than the competitors. And I would say that's the best solution for a non-wired camera situation outside. Otherwise, their Wyze Cam V3 is an excellent camera on its own. It can see really well at night. It doesn't need a lot of light. It can see great with moonlight. It has excellent night vision and all that good stuff. As far as the floodlight goes, I don't know. If you just feel like playing around with something like that, sure, get it. I don't think I would ever buy another one, at least at this point, the way it is. If there was somehow some way to make those two work a little bit better together, but I just don't see there being a way. We're talking about standard exposures here. It's the basic way any camera works. It exposes for the whole scene. And so when there's something that's small in the scene, that small thing is going to be way overexposed when the whole rest of the scene is dark, because the camera is just trying to expose properly for the whole scene. It's not taking the exposure off of, if it could take the exposure off of my face, then what would happen is the camera would dim everything down, the entire surrounding would be totally dark, but I would be properly exposed. I just don't see there being a way for them to do that with something like one of these Wyze cams. It's just not going to happen. That's something that happens on a very, very high dollar camera like what I'm using, a DSLR, but a little security camera like that, it's most likely not going to happen. That being said, those are my thoughts after using the Wyze Cam Floodlight for some time now. It's okay. I mean, it's a floodlight that works really well, and it's a Wyze Cam V3 that is kind of doesn't work so well when attached to the floodlight. On their own, they're great. Would I buy that system again? At the moment and the way it works, no, I wouldn't. But I would buy a normal floodlight and a normal Wyze Cam V3 and use them independently. That way I can place the Wyze Cam V3 wherever I wanted to, but then, you know, again, you're dealing with how do you power the thing? And then you get back to what I was saying before, get a Wyze Cam Outdoor if you're so inclined to have an outdoor camera. They just seem to work pretty dang good, but you are gonna need to subscribe to the Wyze Cam Plus service, which I think is about $1.25 a month, which comes out to, I don't know, $15 a year. Annoying, again, but if you want some cameras that just seem to work and get the job done with a pretty good app, their app is pretty good, the Wyze Cam Outdoor, I think, is where it's at. It's a pretty old camera, and maybe they're coming out with a new version soon, but that's what I would recommend. Otherwise, if you need to, you know, film the inside of your shop or your garage or something like that, get the V3. Those things are great. But yeah, that's my thoughts.